This is real, not a render, not another planet. These are dragon's blood trees, and they've been growing here for millions of years. Socotra. Over 800 plant species, more than a third found nowhere else on Earth, known as the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. But it belongs to Yemen, a nation locked in civil war since 2014. And here's why almost nobody can actually go there. These bizarre silhouettes exist in the physical world. This is a real island, far from a green-screened CGI set. Socotra sits in our oceans, yet it looks entirely detached from human history. But the fantasy ends at the coastline. This untouched landmass is legally tied to a country devastated by violent conflict. How does a place that seems completely isolated from modern civilization end up caught directly in the crosshairs of a major geopolitical crisis? The answer lies in its exact location on the globe. Socotra sits in the Arabian Sea, roughly 150 miles east of the Horn of Africa. Yet it is legally governed by Yemen, which lies 380 kilometers to the north. This position makes the island physically closer to Africa than to its own mainland. But unlike most remote islands, Socotra is not volcanic. It is actually a continental fragment of the ancient supercontinent Gondwana. When the Gulf of Aden opened 15 to 30 million years ago, this landmass drifted away into the ocean. The open waters became a permanent barrier to regular genetic exchange, forcing the stranded organisms down a completely independent evolutionary path over millions of years. This vast separation turned the island into a living time capsule. 825 plant species fight for survival on this strip of land. More than a third of them, roughly 37%, are endemic, meaning they grow naturally nowhere else on Earth. The defining symbol of this evolutionary isolation is the dragon's blood tree. Its branches spread wide into an inside-out umbrella designed to funnel rare mountain mist directly down to the roots. If you slice the bark, a thick blood-red resin oozes out. Ancient Greeks and Roman empires coveted this crimson sap, trading it across continents to use as a vibrant dye, a medicine, and a ceremonial incense. Nearby, bizarre bottle trees rise from the bare limestone plateaus. Their bulbous, swollen trunks act as living water reservoirs, allowing them to withstand months of brutal, baking drought. But the evolutionary treasures do not stop there. Socotra is also home to 11 endemic species of frankincense trees. Yet, their survival is hanging by a thread. The latest scientific assessments classify 4 of these rare frankincense species as critically endangered. This concentration of strange life earned the island its reputation as the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean, leading to its official UNESCO World Heritage designation in 2008. But international labels do not protect fragile roots from grazing livestock, rising temperatures, or the incoming tide of human conflict. Roughly 60,000 people call this isolated island home. This is a lived-in society. Coastal communities rely on daily fishing catches of tuna and sardines. Inland families harvest date palms in the dry lowlands and guide herds of goats and sheep across the steep limestone ridges. Local schools, small healthcare clinics, and bustling markets show a fully functional, self-reliant population, far from an empty tourist attraction. Travel here is highly unstable and cannot sustain the local economy, but their fragile daily rhythm is directly tied to the mainland. Just past these quiet mountain settlements, the shadow of Yemen's civil war is creeping closer. The strategic sea lanes surrounding this peaceful sanctuary have caught the attention of foreign militaries, turning the island's key airstrips and deep-water ports into a highly contested geopolitical prize. Yemen's civil war erupted in 2014, rapidly spiraling into what the United Nations calls one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. Yet, physically separated by hundreds of miles of ocean, Socotra managed to escape the horrors of the mainland battlefields. Houthi rebels never established a foothold on these shores, and direct combat never touched the island's unique forests. But peace did not prevent a political reckoning. While the internationally recognized Yemeni government holds legal, de jure sovereignty over the archipelago, their central authority faced a major challenge. By 2017, a separatist group known as the Southern Transitional Council aggressively expanded its footprint across southern Yemen. This power struggle split Socotra down the middle, separating official legal ownership from de facto control on the ground. Suddenly, the peaceful sanctuary was caught between competing factions, each claiming the right to rule. Why did a peripheral island, completely removed from the Civil War's main front lines, suddenly become a highly coveted strategic prize for rival forces? On April 30th, 2018, the quiet isolation shattered. United Arab Emirates military transport planes touched down on Socotra without warning, deploying troops, tanks, and heavy artillery. UAE forces immediately took operational control of the island's airport and seaport. Local protests erupted as Yemeni officials accused the UAE of an illegal power grab. The UAE defended the move as a joint military training exercise, but Yemeni critics described the deployment as an infringement on national sovereignty. The standoff intensified until Saudi Arabia intervened in mid-May. Under a negotiated deal, Emirati forces withdrew, and administrative control nominally returned to Yemeni authorities. But this brief flashpoint exposed a terrifying vulnerability. The airport and the seaport are the ultimate choke points. They control all entry. They control all exit. They control every single crate of food, medicine, and fuel. When these gateways are seized, the entire island is paralyzed. And today, the gateway is slamming shut. Flights are vanishing. Airspaces are closing. Stranded travelers are realizing they are trapped on an island cut off from the rest of the planet. The U.S. Department of State maintains a strict do not travel advisory for Yemen, citing terrorism, armed conflict, and the complete absence of consular services. But even if you ignore the warnings, actually landing on Socotra is a logistical nightmare. Access relies on a fragile chain of authorizations, unpredictable air gateways, and narrow weather windows. Civilian air and sea links are completely erratic. A sudden political shift or airspace closure can instantly suspend all routes, stranding travelers for weeks. This isolation affects far more than adventurous tourists. Over 60,000 residents, along with researchers and aid workers, depend on these exact same channels. When these gateways freeze, essential shipments of medicine, food, fuel, and ecological monitoring equipment stall. The situation is further complicated by regional instability. While Socotra itself has avoided direct warfare, Houthi missile and drone attacks on commercial vessels in the nearby Red Sea have severely disrupted the wider maritime supply network. Everything is delayed, everything is vulnerable, and it leaves the island's fragile ecosystem completely exposed, raising a terrifying question about what happens when the next massive disaster strikes before outside help can even leave the port. In November 2015, the nightmare became reality. Two historic superstorms, cyclones Chapala and Meg, slammed into Socotra within a single week. Torrential floods, hurricane-force winds, and massive landslides ripped through villages and tore across the limestone plateaus, uprooting thousands of ancient trees in a matter of hours. This physical destruction was the start of a devastating chain. Socotra's rarest species cannot easily recover. The slow-growing dragon's blood tree depends on a highly specific climate to survive. Right now, severe droughts and erratic, unpredictable rainfall are turning the soil to dust, causing newly germinated seedlings to wither and die before they can establish roots. The long-term threat is mounting. Climate assessments show that cyclone frequency is highly complex, but warming temperatures are projected to increase the proportion of very intense tropical cyclones. At the same time, rising sea levels are placing immense storm surge pressure on low coastal areas. When these storms strike, they paralyze the entire island. Wiped out roads and broken ports halt emergency food and medical supplies. They also blind conservation teams. International researchers are locked out, leaving massive gaps in field data. Satellite monitoring captures broad canopy loss from space, but it cannot replace the physical, ground-level surveys needed to track individual species and guide restoration. Yet, the islanders are refusing to let their home vanish. Local residents are stepping up, taking direct action to defend their forests. Families are building fenced nurseries, launching tree guarding initiatives to protect fragile frankincense saplings from roaming livestock, and running community-led conservation projects. They are the only shield protecting these ancient trees. But as the civil war grinds on and global temperatures rise, an unanswered question remains. If another monster storm strikes tomorrow, who will reach this isolated population in time? Today, Socotra remains a fantasy world trapped in a geopolitical nightmare. As climate and conflict tighten their grip, its survival hinges on a cruel paradox. Isolation created this paradise, but isolation might destroy it. Will this alien world survive the forces of our own? Share your thoughts below.